Hello, my name is Jordan Walker. I'm with Sever Storey Law Firm. It is 4 o'clock, so we are going to go again, 3 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, disregard the name on the panelists on the Zoom. My name is Jordan Walker, not Tony Storey. Tony's another attorney at this firm. He will not be participating. But I will just go ahead and get started, and please bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. And I want to make sure we can see. Okay. So if you can't see, please let me know. You should be able to see a PowerPoint presentation. We're gonna go through real quick. Again, my name is Jordan Walker. I'm with Sever Storey Law Firm. Today we're going to be talking about the Heartland Greenway pipeline, carbon capture pipeline. And with that said, we'll just go ahead and get started. Again, just real quick about our firm, what we're doing, so you know who we're talking, who I am, who you're listening to speak. Again, my name is Jordan Walker. Our firm is Sever Storey. Sever Storey, it's actually Sever Storey Walker now, is a law firm. We are a law firm for eminent domain, people that are affected by eminent domain. We represent landowners that are faced with eminent domain, whether it's from a road project or from a power line or from a pipeline. We represent landowners who are faced with this possibility, with this forced acquisition of your property. And real quick, just to talk about what eminent domain is, and we'll get into it a little bit later. Eminent domain is the ability to seize property for a public use. So the most common condemner, as they're referred to, people that utilize eminent domain in the state of Illinois and most states, is the Department of Transportation to build roads. Obviously, in order to build roads, you need to acquire land, and eminent domain is the power of IDOT, as an example, to acquire that land to build the road. This situation is a little different, but it has to be presumed that Heartland Greenway will receive eminent domain authority. They don't have it right now, because that's what happens in the state of Illinois. When companies want to build pipelines, companies like Navigator want to build pipelines in the state of Illinois, they do not, unlike IDOT as an example, they do not have the inherent ability to acquire property via eminent domain. However, they very likely will be delegated that ability by the Illinois Commerce Commission. The Illinois Commerce Commission is a utility commission for the state of Illinois that effectively approves and rejects pipelines, power lines, all sorts of utility projects that are want to be built. And so this is one of those projects. So while they do not have eminent domain authority as we sit here today, they almost certainly will get that authority from the Illinois Commerce Commission. And so we have to approach it as if they already have it, even though they don't currently have it right now. And so that's a real quick rundown on what eminent domain is, and just a real quick rundown on our history and our experience in doing this type of law. We have a ton of experience working against pipelines, against power lines. Utility projects are one of our bread and butters, is where we there's a lot of big pipelines that are being built specifically in the Midwest, and we have represented quite a few landowners in those situations. Just some quick examples: the Spire pipeline in Illinois and Missouri, that's down in southern Illinois, Jersey, and Scott County, and that actually is ongoing a little bit. We're wrapping it up, but that's a pipeline that we worked on behalf of landowners. We've been involved in that for a couple of years now, and we were representing at our highest point before the cases were resolving about 40 plus landowners, and that was only a 60-mile line. And then another example of our experience would be the Dakota Access Pipeline a couple of years ago. This is more similar to that from a geographic perspective. Dakota Access obviously was up into Iowa, and then it came down into Illinois. We represented several landowners on that as well, landowner group as we term them. And we were successful in getting all of our clients better deals the more they started on both of those projects, and really all of these projects. For example, these are just some other pipelines we worked at that are around the country. Cheyenne Connector, that was in Colorado, Rover, Ohio, and other states. And that Rover is in Illinois as well. Atlantic Coast, Penn East. You can read, these are all pipelines that we have worked on, worked with landowners against the pipeline. And so we have a lot of experience working against these utility companies, against these pipelines. We know what they do, we know how they operate, and we also know the law. So we are able to therefore walk landowners through the process from beginning to end, where we come into play, what to look for, and you know, we've experienced a lot and we've gone through a lot. So what I'm here today to do is to relay that experience and those things we've seen. Just real quick about the Heartland Greenway. There's a map there that we put up on the presentation. It is a carbon capture pipeline. It is starting, I believe, in either Minnesota or South Dakota, and it's coming down through Iowa and then eventually ending in Illinois. They're down near Springfield, a little bit to the east of it. It is a 1,300-mile line. It is very long, big pipeline, big project. In Illinois, there are 240 of those miles. It is a carbon capture pipeline, and these are new pipelines, new types of pipelines, wherein the goal of the pipeline is to move liquid CO2 that has been originally captured from the atmosphere and eventually sequestering that CO2 into gas storage caverns that exist around the country. In this instance, they would store the gas down in the central Illinois, and these caverns are very deep underground, just for way of knowing what's going on. So it is a relatively new type of pipeline, but the process and the procedure, they're the same. The facts, the same situations are going to arise on this pipeline just as they were if it were a natural gas pipeline or an oil pipeline or what have you. So the fact that it's a new type of pipeline doesn't really change much in the way of how these companies operate. And I did touch on, excuse me, rather the ICC process of it, and that's what I was talking about, where they would seek eminent domain authority. Navigator has said, Navigator is the company that is responsible for this pipeline. They anticipate beating their ICC process beginning this year, here shortly, I would imagine. And that is the filing wherein they will seek the eminent domain authority that I touched on earlier. Right of way, which ROW is what we call it, right of way easements, acquiring land, all these are the same thing. According to Navigator, they are going to begin this year, if they haven't already, in certain areas of Illinois. I believe they've done some work in Iowa, quite a bit of work in Iowa already. And I would anticipate that if they haven't already, they will start doing their land acquisition in Illinois here shortly. So I would expect if you're a landowner, and again, we don't work for Navigator, we don't know what their schedule is, we just know what's being publicly released and what we hear from landowners. But you know, it's very possible that you're going to hear from a right-of-way agent this year who's going to come to you and seek your property, look for, try to get an easement on your property for this pipeline. And that's why we're having this webinar, so that you are prepared when that happens. The in-service date for this pipeline is 2024 to 2025. We'll see. A lot of these projects have ambitious timelines. In-service dates get pushed back all the time. For this purpose, we'll just assume that's when it's going to be in service, but that can obviously change. The pipeline is set to be 5 feet deep and between 6 to 24 inches wide, depending on where you're located on the route. So with that being said, let's talk about what Heartland Greenway is going to want from you when they come in, or Navigator. In order to build this pipeline, they are obviously going to need to acquire quite a bit of land. And how they acquire that land is through a document called an easement. And easements are the standard title conveyances that allow pipelines to operate and to build them on people's lands. If you have one on your property, a pipeline right now, or a power line right now on your property, odds are high that those are tied to an easement that exists on your title it could possibly be an old easement, but it is almost certainly an easement that is granting that company the right to be there on your property if you already have one. If you don't, if you drive down any highway in any rural area, you're going to see power lines. You're going to see power lines. You might see pipeline signs. Again, those were secured. Those were able to be built by the pipeline securing an easement from the landowner to build whatever it is. On this project, the easement is going to be 50 feet wide and between 50 to 75 feet wide for temporary workspace. So you'll have a 50-foot wide permanent easement, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It lasts forever. It'll be permanent. It'll last with the property. And it'll exist on the property until it's extinguished, and it only gets extinguished either by statute or by the pipeline forfeiting it, but rarely do they get extinguished. So it will be forever, the 50-foot portion. And then they will, again, seek a 50 to 75-foot temporary easement. And as you might imagine, that is temporary. It lasts generally for 2 years, but it all depends on what the easement says. And that, again, it is temporary. It is used for construction purposes, usually to hold dirt or construction equipment on the property. But it is relinquished to you. The land is relinquished to you after the temporary easement expires. So they will come through, and when I say that they're going to try to acquire your land, they are going to present you with an easement, and they are going to present you with a compensation offer. What this compensation offer is very likely to include, and I say very likely because we have not seen offers on this project yet, but these are based on our research and based on what is generally offered on these projects, is you will get an offer for your land. So if they need a 2-acre permanent easement, they will offer you 2 acres times whatever the price per acre they determine to be fair in the area of agricultural property or whatever type of property you have. They will offer 2 acres, or whatever they're taking, some amount of money for that. So let's say you got a piece of farm ground, it's worth 12, 13 an acre. It's good ground, and they find some comps in the area, and they'll offer you, that amount of money times 2 acres times between 50 to 90%. And then, so they'll offer the money for the land itself, the actual easement. They'll offer crop damages. They've already said they're going to do that. My understanding is it's going to be 3 years of crop damages, going from 100% the first year, 80% the second year, and 60% the third year. And then on top of that, they will, it's possible, again, but I don't necessarily know, that they will offer a signing bonus. And that's fairly common in these situations, to offer an early signing bonus to lock these parcels up so they don't have to worry about them. I don't know if they're going to do that or not. It's up to them. They might consider the crop damage aspect a signing bonus. But in any event, those are the 3 things that we see fairly common in the offers made by these companies. And then if you see this slide right here, you can see a schedule according to the pipeline. And as you can see, right now, we're obviously, we're in May of 2022, and you can see that the projected ICC submittal date is the Q2 of 2022. So that is coming up. As a matter of fact, it's coming to a close here shortly. And then as you will note, on Q3 and Q4 of 2022, route adjustments from landowners and stakeholder feedback, right-of-way easement acquisition. So there you go. That's according to their schedule, that they should be acquiring easements here at the end of this year. We'll see if that actually happens. And then as you follow the schedule, you can see that eventually they want to start construction in the first half of 2024 and then finish it in 2024 and 2025. So that's kind of a full discussion about the pipeline as we know it. Let's talk about what to look for in these situations. So we talked about the easement, and we'll just run over real quick what an easement is. An easement is a document. It's a document that you will sign that will convey certain rights to Heartland or Navigator. And it is recorded at the county recorder's office. And again, it goes on your title history. So if you were to sell your property 3 years from now, and the pipeline went in before that, and somebody did a title search on your property, they would, in their research, it would come up with this pipeline easement. It will show that it exists on the on the property, and that it'll be there forever via the permanent nature of it. So an easement, people ask, the biggest question that I get from landowners is what is the pipeline allowed to do? What is the power line allowed to do? What is the utility allowed to do via this document? And my answer, of course, is it all depends on what the easement says. It depends on what you sign and what you're granting to a navigator. If you do not grant navigator the right to do something in this easement document, they cannot do it. It is a very specific, well, it should be a document that grants a very specific set of rights that does not overly broad. That basically says, okay, you can build a pipeline. Here's how you're allowed to do it, and anything else you're not allowed to do. And that would be a good easement. That is almost certainly not what is going to be presented to you when the right-of-way company comes in and starts making offers. Important, and we'll get into that, but important aspects of an easement would say what the pipeline can do, what the pipeline can't do, and what the pipeline must do, where the pipeline can do those things, and then when and how long they can do it. So really, all three of those would explain, a good easement would define what they're allowed to do, where they're allowed to do it, and how long they're allowed to do whatever they would like. And as long as those terms are defined, you should be okay, and defined well, I might add. You should be okay, but they have to be set forth in the easement. If they are not set forth in the easement, then you run the risk of the pipeline being able to do much more than what you potentially bargained for. So for example, and this is on the down here, what the easement that they are going to propose to you when they come out to you, the right-of-way people, when they come out and they try to sell you on the idea of you selling them your land, they're going to say, okay, well, I work for a right-of-way company who's hired by Navigator to get your property, and and they'll present you with an offer package that'll have compensation, it should have maps, it should have the easement they want you to sign, and all that good stuff. But in that document, that first version of the easement they send you, I am almost certain that they are going to try to sneak stuff in there that they do not say is in there. For example, these are some of the more common issues we see with easements that are presented to us. We see multiple pipelines, meaning the easement doesn't say that you can build one pipeline. It doesn't say that you can build two. It says that they can build as many as they like. Fiber optic, it says that they can run fiber optic cable through the easement and then lease that fiber optic cable out to cable companies and then get money off your easement without your permission, without you actually getting any of the cut. Sometimes they like to sneak in the ability to build power lines next to it. Oftentimes when a pipeline is built or a transmission line is built, it starts the beginning of a transmission corridor, meaning they'll run a utility next to it, another utility next to it, another utility next to it. Now, there's nothing stopping your property turning into a utility corridor, but at the very least, you must ensure that that easement doesn't already grant these utility companies the right to do it, because then they'll just come in and do it, and they're not going to pay you again. But if you have a well-crafted easement that says one pipeline right there, they can't come in and just put something next to it without your permission. They got to go through this entire process again, and most importantly, they'll have to pay you again. Another example, blanket easements. These aren't as common as they used to be, but I still see them to this day. A blanket easement is an easement that blankets the property, in that the easement covers the entirety of the property, and it applies to every corner, and it effectively allows them to do whatever they want, wherever they want on the property, all of it, and not just the 2-acre easement that they want. Other things, unfettered access. They like to have the ability to come onto your property whenever they want. It's fairly common for this type of clause to be inserted into an easement document. They'll try to limit their liability if things go wrong on the property, on the pipeline. They'll try to limit that. These are just some examples, but the takeaway point in this is that when you get that document from the right-of-way company that's trying to get your property, don't listen to what they say. Read the actual document and see what type of rights that you're granting to the company. Because once you sign that easement, if you sign that easement, there's no going back. And it's not only that, there's no going back forever. It will always be there no matter what. So with that being said, let's talk about right-of-way agents real quick. When they come out to you and they do that, bear in mind, and we deal with them all the time, unfortunately, but we know their tricks and we know they operate. And one thing they like to do is make landowners feel like they have your interest at heart. They are not paid to have your interest at heart. They are paid by the pipeline company, and they're paid by the pipeline company to get your land. It's as simple as that. Anything else, it's just window talk. They're just trying to get you to sign the documents. They're trying to not have you sign or hire an attorney. They don't want you to think twice about what you're signing. Just listen to what they're saying in order to get one over on you. So don't be I generally advise not dealing with right-of-way agents at all and just having your attorney handle it. But if you do choose to try to talk to these people, I would just I would advise you to be skeptical of what's being told to you and limit interactions to a minimum. They'll try to bug you. Don't let them. Tell them you don't want to talk, or have your attorney handle it. So we talked about the easement and how important it is to make sure that document is crafted appropriately and accurately. The second issue, of course, is money. When they come in, like I said, we already touched on the offers they're going to make and the crop damages and that and what have you. But I do want to talk about what every three aspects of the compensation package that should be included in an offer to a landowner for an easement. They should have compensation for lost crops, because rest assured, this pipeline is going to have an effect on your future crop growth and your future crop recovery within the easement. And oftentimes they are offering 3 years, it sounds like, at a decreasing amount over time. I would strongly advise not thinking that is going to be the extent of your crop loss and crop damage. I would advocate for a much lengthier time frame with as much future crop damage as you can recover. Because again, once you sign the document, it doesn't matter if 4 years from now your crops are not growing on the easement anymore, or they're growing half as high as they used to, because you've already signed the paperwork that says the money is satisfactory. So if you're going to sign this paperwork, you need to make sure you get compensated for everything ahead of time, because going back and trying to get that money is going to be a very difficult endeavor. So make sure compensation for lost crops is included, compensation for the land taken. Of course, the land value needs to be appropriate. And on top of that, oftentimes, as I stated earlier, they offer a percentage of your land value from 50 to 90%. And the reason why they do that, as they rationalize, is that they are acquiring not a full, they're not acquiring the entirety of the property or the land. They're only acquiring the right to build the pipeline. And they'll say, well, you can still farm on it, and you can still grow crops, and you can still use it for the purposes that you were previously using for it. If it's recreational ground or wooded property, again, they'll make the claim that you can still use it. They'll still use it just as you could before. The reality is that, even if you can grow crops on it after, it's not what it was before. And it's important that you get paid for the entirety of that amount. And then finally, and this isn't, I guarantee you're not going to get this as part of your offer. If they do, it'll be surprising. But it's important that you get compensated for the impact this pipeline easement is going to have on the rest of your property. So if they're taking a 2-acre swath, you have a 50-acre tract, but it's going right through the middle of it, effectively dividing the parcel into 2 halves. There's an impact, in my view, on the remnant, on the other 48 acres that are not being acquired, but are being nevertheless impacted financially. They're losing value. As the argument goes, people don't want to be next to pipelines, and as a consequence, they pay less money for tracks with them versus without them. And so the argument there is that you're entitled to the difference in the entirety of your property and not just the 2 acres they're acquiring. Again, I would be shocked if Navigator comes in and makes any sort of offer for that amount of money, let alone even discusses it. And generally they don't, because if you're applying percentage reductions into large tracts of land, the numbers that you're entitled to, the compensation you're entitled to, goes much higher than if it does if you're just talking about crop losses or land value, that being a price per acre. For example, if you have a 100-acre tract, it's worth $10,000 an acre. It's $1 million tract of land, and it loses 10% of its value because of the pipeline's introduction. That's $100,000. And, the pipeline's not going to have a discussion that involves $100,000. They want to have a discussion over crop losses where the discussion is over 10 to 15. That's a negotiation they want to have because they're already winning. Because if you're not discussing remainder damage, if you're not discussing the impact on the remnant, you're going to come out behind. So it's very important that you get paid for that during this discussion, during these negotiations with the pipeline. So let's talk about some do's and don'ts, and then we'll wrap up. Things you should do: have a legal professional review all of your documents. I do this for free all the time. If and when you get an offer, all you have to do is send it to me. And my email is jordan@landownerattorneys.com. It'll be on at the end as well. So sit tight for that information. So have somebody review all your documents. Again, this goes back to the easement discussion earlier. You need to make sure, get a second set of eyes to look at the documents, review it, make sure there's nothing funny in there. And not only that, make sure the person who you're having look at it, has looked at an easement before. Your local attorney who you have handle everything, he or she might be able to look at it, but there's some things that are very specific to this field that you need to be very familiar with, or it might go unnoticed in these negotiations. And on the same vein, what not to do is do not take the pipeline's word for it. Promises are going to be made, assurances will be issued, all of these things. Don't worry, they'll do this, they'll do that, all of these things, the right-of-way agent's going to say it. It doesn't mean anything if it's not in writing. It doesn't mean anything if it's not an easement or in some other contract that you've signed with them. You need to have it in writing, you need to have it with some teeth, or they're just not going to do it, because if they already have you sign the document, they'll just follow what that document says, and I guarantee it's not going to say what you want it to say as far as fixing your property or getting you paid or addressing all the issues we've talked about. Another do, enlist professional negotiate on your behalf. Again, that sounds self-serving, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure that whatever deal you're accepting is actually a good deal. And as it happens, we are situated where we have reviewed hundreds of offers. Me personally, I've represented hundreds of clients on pipeline issues. I've reviewed easements. I've seen these documents. I've seen what they've tried to pull before, and I've seen where the compensation usually shakes out. And so that way, I happen to know what a good deal is, and I happen to know what, if you're getting one, relative to not only landowners in Illinois, the landowners in Missouri or Iowa or Georgia or Indiana or Ohio who have gone through similar situations that are near identical situations to you, and we've negotiated their settlements. So we have a grasp for the market, we have a grasp for what you're generally entitled to, and we can utilize that knowledge in our negotiation. And what also not to do is do not be rushed into a quick decision. The right-of-way agents, when they start contacting you, are going to bug you. They are going to hound you. They're going to show up at your house. They're going to call you. They're going to email you somehow. They're going to try to get in touch with you as much as possible in order to get you to sign this paperwork, because that's their job. Their duty to Navigator is to get you to sign the paperwork. So they're going to do what they need to do so that they get paid. You know, every parcel they lock up, they get a bonus. So they know that. Now you know that. And so just bear that information in mind when you're, if and when you're talking to these people, and just be cautious of what they want to do. But like I said, they will try to make you make a rush decision, because a rush decision for them is a good result. Then finally, do's and don'ts. The final do and don't. What to do: form a landowner group. There are, I believe, 2,000 different tracts of land involved in this project in Illinois, and the more tracts of land in a group, which we've talked about, I touched on groups a little bit before. What we generally do on these large projects is we form landowner groups that are several, hopefully, dozens, hundreds of whatever, a large group of landowners represented by the same council. That is, the benefits of something like that are immeasurable. They allow that group to, it is the benefit of being a part of a large group, where the pipeline understands that, the bigger the group, the bigger the headache that group can cause for the pipeline. They can hold it up, they can pause it, they can gum everything up, they can make it much, much, much more expensive for the pipeline to be built if a landowner group is adequately represented and knows what the stakes are involved. And we know what the stakes are, and we understand the pressure points and how to utilize that to get the best result. So of course, we're not asking every landowner to form one, but if a landowner signs up with our firm and then brings their neighbor along, or brings their neighbor along, or brings their neighbor along, and so on and so forth, if we can build a large group of landowners, which we hope to do on this project, all that means is that you get the benefit of that size and the size of the group. It's not a class action, and we still represent the landowners individually. However, our motto is basically we represent the landowner individually, but there's a power of the group. So you get the power, but you still have the control over your individual case. What not to do: do not, now if you don't have an offer, there's not a lot to do. But when they do come in and give you that offer and start negotiating or wanting to negotiate, people are tempted a lot of these times to just let it sit and not deal with it. That is not a course of action I recommend. It's something necessarily you don't need to act quickly, but you don't want to ignore it altogether, because that is a way to end up in a bad spot. You need to provide it with the right attention necessary, which might not be a lot, or you could enlist an attorney who can do it, and then you don't have to worry about it at all. So I would just advise not to just ignore it off jump when you get the offer. Until that point, there's not a lot to do besides educate yourself on the pipeline and eminent domain generally. And with that being said, that is the end of the presentation. It says contact an attorney immediately. You do not need to contact an attorney immediately unless you have an offer. We're just going to put that in there. If you have an offer. And I will review it for free. When you do get that offer, I am happy to take a look at it, give you my thoughts for free, and then you can decide what to do. This is just what we do generally. Well, not generally, we do it all the time. And if landowners want to hire us, that's great. If not, that's also fine as well. You don't owe me anything. And in fact, you don't owe me anything even if you hire me, because our firm operates on a what is referred to as a contingency fee, where we only get paid if we get you more money than what is initially offered. We can get into that individually if you're interested in talking further. That is our toll-free number, 888-318-3761. That is my email there at the bottom. Feel free to write those down. You should have it on the postcard that I sent as well. Again, my name is Jordan Walker. I am the only Illinois attorney in our firm, so if you work with us, you'll be working with me. And with that being said, I am going to go ahead and open it up for questions. Okay, there are no questions. Thank you everyone for stopping by. I do appreciate it. If you do have questions, feel free to contact me, Jordan at landownerattorneys.com. And with that being said, good luck, and hopefully we hear from you.